Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We're excited to be here with you all today. I hope everyone is staying well and staying as safe as they can these days. We're excited to have actually a pre-recorded session with some former clients of ours, and we'll be talking about how they cracked the M7. So we'll be playing that video momentarily. My name is Scott Edinburgh. I'm the founder of Personal MBA Coach, and we'll watch that and think of all your questions, and we'll come back for some Q&A afterwards. So thanks so much, everyone. Hope everyone is staying as safe and healthy as they can these days. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Scott Edinburgh. I'm the founder of Personal MBA Coach. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do in a minute. And I'll be joined by 3 clients today, 2 of whom are here now. One's going to be joining in about a half hour. So Jamie Marvel from Wharton, and Parker Lowe also from Wharton, and then we'll be having another client join from Yale as well. So I'll give you a little bit of introduction to myself. I'll sort of talk through some candidate success stories, and then I'll pass on to Jamie and Parker to talk a little bit about their experiences as well. If you have any questions, please just feel free to ask them in the comments. I think there are a couple different places where you can ask questions on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook, feel free to kind of ask there as well. And we'll see how many questions we have. Often these videos are watched delayed, so if you don't have as many questions, then that would be the reason. So a little bit about my background. I went to MIT for undergrad and studied economics and business at Sloan. Was a teaching assistant for one of the MBA courses as an undergrad. Then I worked at Deloitte in consulting for a few years. Did mostly mergers and acquisitions work, and I went to Wharton for the MBA. Picked Wharton because when I was in high school, I took a couple summers of economics classes at Wharton. Really liked the curriculum and wanted to go back for the MBA. So went there, loved the experience, and went there. Studied real estate, great real estate program, studied some healthcare. I actually founded Personal MBA Coach when I was a first-year student there. Helped a couple of my good friends with their applications. They had hired other firms to help them with their processes, and ended up sort of improving the the sort of quality and level of detail a bit here. And the first 2 got into Harvard, and another one got into Wharton, and we just expanded from there. So now 13 years later, I run the company with my sister, who's a former Bain consultant, and we also have some M7 admissions directors on our team as well. I'm on the board of directors for the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. Happy to talk to you about the organization later. We were just talking about our board meeting before this about an applicant fair that we might be having again this year, which will be very exciting. And we do a lot of things with admissions directors. So there's a conference every year with the heads of admissions. We'll even analyze these sort of fake profiles and determine who should get accepted and rejected and why. I tend to do a lot of different talks, not just ones here, but at different events like the GMAT conference, and many different consulting firms who invite us in to go and present. So our clients get in with a 96% success rate, and we had actually over $6 million in scholarships last year. So a little bit more about what we do, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. So, what does Personal MBA Coach do? For those of you that are not familiar with us or admissions consulting in general, we help you throughout the entire life cycle of your journey. So you could be in college and watching this, or just graduating. We have what we call early MBA planning programs, which is essentially strategic guidance and advice for how you can improve yourself between now and when you apply. What extracurriculars should you do? Should you join a new organization? Should you start something? Are you in the right job? Are you doing the right things at the right job? Then we have complete GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment tutoring. We have in-house software that we use to guide through the sessions with modules, sample questions, thousands of answers, full-length exams. Our applicants that use our tutoring do extremely well in exams. GMAT on average, they're raising by a little over 90 points, and GRE have kind of similar numbers. And I mentioned some of this before, but we have former M7 interviewers and also top 10 and top 15 interviewers. A lot of people that used to interview at the schools on our team to help, and then former clients to network with at all of the sort of top schools here. Talk a little bit about some sort of success stories. Maybe I'll do one success story, and then I'll go to sort of introduce our clients here today, and then we'll bounce back for some others. So these folks are doing a lot, and often it's kind of articulating some kind of compelling story, some kind of unique story. Now, if anyone wants other advice, so not just success stories, we have a lot of other webinars and videos. So visit our website, www.personalmbacoach.com. We have videos on our homepage. Parker's on our homepage, I believe. And so you can hear other tips, advice on things to do. This is really just focused on success stories from applicants who have done it in the past. So here's candidate one. I kept things a little bit vague, given this is a public video, but GPA was below 3.5, GRE in the 330s. 4 years of experience in consulting, and this was a white female that studied at a top school. So this is sort of the person, and this is not one of our folks here today. This is somebody else. This is sort of the person that you have in mind, right? This image. Now, what were some challenges here? One, previous rejection. So this was not the first time that this person had applied. Kind of a common background, right? If we go back to consulting, common background. So how can we step out and not be just a consultant? And we can actually hear a little bit about that today from some of our folks. And then average stats, lower than 3.5 GPA. I feel like that's not so amazing. And GRE into the 330s, but it was on the lower side, let's say. So some details, right? So we actually focused a lot on art, and I keep a lot of this anonymous. So some of the details might be changed around a little bit just for privacy, but very specific focus. So here, focused on like art and art consulting, passionate about art, kind of growing up with that. So that ended up being an important theme. And then we had to figure out how to work this theme together. And so what's important as you're thinking about working themes together is to what level of detail do you actually have to go into as you're working through a theme. I was talking with a client a few days ago who really wanted to connect everything together. And in this particular instance, I said, it might not actually make the most sense. Your professional details are different from your personal details. And, he also came from an overrepresented, background. And I said, look, let's just keep these two things separate. If you love wine, I love wine and wine tasting. Maybe I'll own a vineyard one day. We'll see. That's sort of one area. And then if you're doing, a totally different line of work, like that's okay, right? But in some cases, we actually move is the wrong word. We kind of meld them together and create this one kind of interesting story. And so that's what we did here. We took the personal and the professional together, and got into booth with $150,000 in scholarships. But the one other success story, and then I'll go to my clients to kind of chat a little bit about their backgrounds. So here's someone else, 4.0 GPA, so clearly did really well. Mid 330s on the GRE, few years of experience, 3-4 years-ish of experience in working in finance. So what do we do here? Some things that were important to focus on were the actual interests. So sports and tutoring, and kind of combining those together. Now, when you think of sports, you might think, okay, so I've done sports. A lot of people have done sports. What is the difference? And for those of you just joining, a brief overview, because I saw the numbers sort of climbing up. So I went to MIT for undergrad, Wharton for my MBA, been running personal MBA coach for the last 13 years. And these are a few of the things that we have. You can go back and watch the beginning later, but that's sort of who I am, and my name is Scott. So we had some new joiners. So for this story, if you think about sports and you think about like helping other people and being passionate about people, that can manifest itself in different ways. Like one, it's just mentorship, telling people that they need to, be better, helping people to think through themselves. And then you can also have the thought process behind it. How do people think? How do people want to think? Can you help them to think a little bit better? And so we actually, kind of use those different themes together, even though it feels like it might not be super business school focused. And then we connected people to the consulting goals. And what we did was, in this case, this applicant didn't have a ton of work experience relative to some others, closer to 3 than 4. And so we focused a lot on the leadership roles, and specifically what we did as a leader at the firm and outside of the firm to try to offset some of that lower years of work experience. And this was actually our most successful client last year, based on numbers alone, you guys are also equally successful, but got into all 6 schools that this applicant applied to at $550,000 in scholarships. So before we go into success story 3, thoughts, Parker, if you want to start, kick it off, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and a couple-minute overview of your experience going through the process with us, and to what extent you want to talk about your own personal story as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Scott. Happy to chat a little bit about my background and experience with you guys. So talking a little bit about my background, I graduated from Caltech in 2018 with a BS in physics, and I pivoted to consulting and worked in the public sector with Deloitte and the State Department for 2 years, bringing analytics to the policy process. And this was, I think, a similar background to a lot of applicants, but also different insofar as it was consulting, but it was public sector, and it was more STEM oriented than business or econ oriented. So business school was something that really hadn't been on my radar as an undergrad, and it was something that had only now eked its way into my consciousness, a year or 2 after having left undergrad. So I was originally planning to apply now this current fall. So I reached out to Scott in February to start having a conversation about things I could maybe do over the summer to prepare. But as we all know, the world is a very tumultuous place. And as a result, COVID struck, and Scott got back to me and he said, you know what, you should probably just apply right now, round 3. And that, in my opinion, was probably one of the most valuable pieces of advice I could have gotten, because it ended up putting me here at Wharton, and B, Scott had this incredible ability to understand the way that the entire process was going to change and evolve. And the value of that advice to me was just immeasurable. So talking a little bit about the actual tactical things that we worked on in the application process, I would say that there were 3 key components. Number 1, he helped me to refine that unique value proposition that I mentioned before. How do I translate Caltech physics and public sector consulting at the State Department into a story that makes sense for business schools? So I can maybe go back and chat a little bit about that if some more questions come up there. But turning it into a story was very important. And, secondly, taking that story and tailoring it specifically to the different factors and facets that each school wanted, because each school has, very different priorities, and tuning that story to resonate with each school and with each, panel of admissions people that were going to be looking at it, I think is also extremely important. And last but not least, the interview prep, extremely important. And it was great to connect with a lot of other clients of Scott's, because they're all, equally highly motivated people that really, we'd really push each other to prepare as effectively as possible for the interviews, especially the Wharton group interview. And another client of Scott's who I practiced for the Wharton group interview with ended up getting accepted as well. And he and I remain good friends. So a few, I think, takeaways from this whole experience for me. Number 1, earlier is better. If I hadn't reached out to Scott in February thinking that I was going to be starting this process in the fall, I would have missed this window entirely. So the earlier you get involved with Scott, the better. You can have more time to think about your story, more time to work on your GMAT, more time to adapt your strategy based on changing global circumstances. Earlier is absolutely better. Takeaway number 2, just the advice, the feedback, and the confidence that I got from Scott were absolutely worth it, both in terms of improving my application and improving the way I felt about myself and the way I felt about my application. Because without that preparation, I don't think I would have had the confidence to perform as well and come across as strongly as I could have and should have. And finally, and I think most importantly, Scott really acts as a force multiplier. So taking what you put in, multiplying that effort in terms of what you get out. But if you go in and you expect Scott, hey, please write my applications for me, please turn me into a good interviewer and produce a good story for me, it's just not going to happen. It's really on you to do 99% of the work, and on Scott to look at your work and say, this is what you need to change in order to be as effective as you need to be. So it's certainly a big leap in terms of effort and responsibility on your end as a client, but something that was absolutely worth the effort. So with that, I'm happy to pass it off or take any questions.
Great. Well, Parker, thanks so much. Really appreciate the kind words here. So we do have one question here. So from Mohammed. And I'll show this here. How do you combine your Caltech experience with work experience and made a cohesive story for business school? Yeah. So I guess maybe you can just talk for another 30, 60 seconds kind of about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually hoping someone was going to ask about this because it was a really fun exercise to do. I knew that the Caltech background was something that was going to be unique for business schools because I think there are actually 3 other people at Wharton currently from Caltech, which is a lot more than I thought there were going to be. But tuning that in a way that made sense to admissions officers was key. And I think the way I was able to achieve this was combining it with my work experience to tell a story about why I needed an MBA in order to make the most of that background. And the angle I ended up pursuing was talking about my goal of becoming a chief data officer. If any of you guys are familiar with the role of a chief data officer, it's essentially a new sort of emerging C-suite position where you have an executive, at a high level who's in charge of like data and analytics for the organization. As organizations become more data driven, it becomes more important to have these types of people in these types of positions, rather than the sort of geriatric executive stereotype that I think a lot of us think of. And this was something that was a perfect fit for my background because, it was clear that Caltech physics gives you a good grasp of STEM concepts and analytics. It was clear that the work I did implementing analytics at the State Department and working with their chief data officer exposed me to that role, made me interested and excited about it, and revealed to me the importance of that role and the effect that I could have in that role. And, it made telling that story very natural and very effective and very well suited for an MBA and for, the value that I would get out of the MBA. Because I think a lot of the importance of the story is telling them why they need to accept you and why you need the education that they provide. And I think it would have been a lot weaker if I said, yeah, I'd like to go into private equity just like everyone else. Check, please. That might have had some element of truth in it, but I don't think it would have been nearly as effective. So just finding those elements in your background that resonate with you and resonate, presumably with the admissions office, I think will dramatically enhance your chances of, success moving down the line.
Super helpful. Thank you so much. And on goals, I know we're not talking about goals today, but also for all the watchers here, you can ask any questions that you want on anything. We talk about a lot of different things in other webinars. Goals are super important, and you don't need to be aggressive in the goals. As Parker said, yes, you can write about venture capital or private equity if you want to, but guess what? It's probably not going to help you to get accepted. And so we often find that tough balance between writing something that's going to feel really, really good for you, and then also going to get you accepted. So we'll go to the next success story, and then we'll come to Jamie afterwards. So here's another applicant, an Indian female, internationally from outside the U.S. 730 GMAT, 3 years of work experience and working in trading, sales and trading type of a role. So what was a challenge? Well, scholarships, right? So scholarships were important. At least getting some sort of money, not necessarily the most money, because we wanted a high school, but at least some sort of money. With kind of average test scores, lighter extracurriculars and limited experience in just 3 years. If anyone wants to talk about really not having much, really not having much experience at all, you can ask something to Parker, who had even lower. But still, 3 is kind of a little bit on the lighter side. So extracurriculars, so we were a STEM major, a lot of focus on healthcare. So here's a picture of, some kind of volunteering in a hospital. The goals are healthcare consulting. And, we had some experiences with like gaps in the healthcare system. So in this case, we did tie together the personal experiences with the professional story, which, I'm using some examples of of times when people did that. Not that you have to do that every time, but it makes for a more interesting story to tell. So if you have questions on how to do this, if your stories don't align, let me know. I can tell you about mine, which my personal and professional stories had nothing to do with each other. So what else do we do? We talked about the future career and like passionate about the future career with the thought around the career switch. So why are we switching from like sales and trading to a non-sales and trading kind of role. And then we also focused on the willingness to lead here despite being underrepresented. So what we meant by this is, here's somebody who, let's say, was not part of the most common group of traders as far as what she looked like or where she was from, but still had a leadership role and talked about how she developed that leadership in an environment that didn't really have a lot of people in support above her. And so what was the final result? We got into Chicago Booth and Michigan with over 160,000 and combined scholarships here. And a couple things to note before we go on to Jamie is, this is a challenging year, right? And so for those of you who are applying now and thinking of submitting in round 2, first of all, it's not too late. So Parker's going to start early, which is absolutely the right advice. It is. But if you're listening to this today and you're applying in round 2, you can't start early, but it's not too late. And Jamie can talk a little bit about her timeline maybe. It's definitely not too late. We can still help you. But, just kind of know, it's a little bit brighter there. Just be realistic about the expectations, right? It is a challenging year. Application numbers are up. More people are applying. And the numbers are raising faster than schools are adding any seats, even for those schools that are adding seats. So, just kind of keep that in mind. So Jamie, maybe I'll let you talk for like a couple minutes or so. Nothing too crazy about your background and as much detail as you want to give us about your experiences, and then we'll go back to some questions and we'll go back to other success stories.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jamie. I am a first year at Wharton as well. A little bit about my background. So went to Notre Dame for undergrad, majored in economics and accounting. From there, much like many of the people you'll hear on these calls, I went into consulting. I was at McKinsey for 2 years, doing mostly work in the healthcare space. I did a lot of growth strategy work, org redesign, things like that for major healthcare providers. From there, I decided to take an externship at SoftBank for a year where I worked on the human capital team, working with portfolio companies on a variety of talent-related issues, operational issues, things like that. From there, I came to Scott in mid-December of last year, and in kind of a full panic, saying I wanted to apply in round 2. How could he help me with about 2-3 weeks left before deadlines? Wouldn't necessarily recommend that timeline, but as Scott mentioned, if you're sitting on this call right now and you haven't started yet, it still is possible. Reached out to Scott mid-December with the intent of still applying to 5 schools by round 2. And And so in that, worked with Scott for kind of on an accelerated timeline over 3 weeks to really get those applications ready to go by, those early January deadlines. And I would say kind of 3 main things emerged for me in terms of the value that Scott and his team really add. First off, and I think, this is something that you would likely see if you started the process as late as I did. I think there's a component of just really alleviating some of the stress around the process. When I was looking at this mound of applications that I had in the middle of December, I didn't even know where to start. I had written, half an essay here, half an essay there, but there was really no organized approach to how I was taking on this process. And so I think it's very tactical, and it might seem simple, but just setting you up on a process where you can tackle these applications in a very organized way and really make sure that the applications for each of your schools can be viewed in a holistic manner and really tell a consistent story throughout. So I would say that's point one, and it may seem small, but for me it was a huge value add. I would say the second thing, in terms of goals, a lot of these schools will ask you, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? And I had a pretty good idea about short-term goals. I intend to go back to consulting following. And while I had a sense of my long-term goals, I didn't really understand, the level of specificity that is important to a lot of these applications. And so Scott really helped me uncover, okay, here's what your long-term goal is, but what does that really mean in practice? How are you going to add value to these companies? What do you specifically see yourself doing in the role you've specified? And that was something that, I'd really never thought of. It's something 3-4 years down the line, or even 5 years down the line from now. And I hadn't taken the time to really dig into what my long-term goals meant in practice. And then I think the last thing, and Parker touched on this a little bit, I didn't have too many extracurriculars, and when sitting down to write my applications initially, I didn't really see a common theme that was kind of emerging throughout my application. And so Scott really helped me to uncover, what are some of the things that tie together my past experiences, both personal and professional, that I can lean on in these applications. And so for me, it ended up being a lot around teamwork and collaboration as a former collegiate athlete. And these were things that I didn't really necessarily see in my own experiences, but they were themes that Scott pointed out to me, and that we were really able to kind of weave through the whole application. So those are kind of my main 3 points that I would touch on. Happy to chat about, getting involved in the process late, developing your short and long-term goals, anything like that, happy to chat about. But yeah, at Wharton now, first year, was also admitted to Booth as well.
Great. Well, Jamie, thank you so much. So we'll go to success story 4. Okay, and now Noreena's now here as well. So we'll bring Noreena into the stream here. Hi, Noreena. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Actually, if you click on the little 3 ellipses, sorry if this is too casual for folks, I'm a casual guy. Click on the little 3 ellipses next to your name and click edit name, and just type your school afterwards.
Oh, okay.
That would be great for folks. So we're in success story 4, which is not Noreena. So we'll go over another one, and then we'll get to you afterwards, and then we'll go back to some Q&A as well. So success story 4. This was a guy. I'll say CETOS, because CETOS wouldn't mind. So it was a 3.4 GPA, 750 GMAT, automotive, experience, a very sort of specific specific background. Wanted to go or went to a top 30 undergrad school rather. Wanted to go to a really top MBA. We met a while ago actually. We met at one of the MBA fairs. I do a lot of talks at different fairs. We met at one in Boston. And, we did an early planning package. So I helped him specifically with what organizations to get involved in, what to do here and there. And we actually, did a lot to change his whole sort of approach there. And, some challenges were, differentiating, kind of male engineer with an average GPA. Now, some details, we focused a lot on self-driving cars. So we worked in a self-driving car company, debate, some volunteer sort of community work. And, the goals were project management and the mobility industry. So also super specific. At one point, we actually got too narrow for the goals. And I said, hold on, let's dial this back a bit. I don't want you to write about 3 jobs that you can have post-MBA. And so, we might have to actually expand the horizon, let's say. And, otherwise, we were really just passionate about like cars and transportation. So this was an example where, some people are generalists and they don't know what they're going to write about. And so we have to figure out what are we covering. And some people are like super narrow. So this was a case where my only hesitation going into this was like, are we too narrow, right? Because every extracurricular, so many of the things are focused on cars that I thought, actually, I wonder if this is going to be a little bit too narrow. And so we just tried to beef up everything that we could within the roles that we had. And, at the end of the day, we, like I said, like doubled down on the unique goals. So we didn't try to say, well, I also, I love this, horseback riding, and I helped my uncle at his racetrack or something. We just kind of focused on what we were actually good at. And I think by being really genuine and authentic, it worked out. And this person, also got into Wharton and Kellogg. So that's an example there. He actually might have been here to chat, but wasn't able to join. So that's success story 4. And now, Noreena, maybe I'll let you introduce yourself, and you can talk through your sort of background here a bit. And I'll just kind of click through the slides. So just say next slide, and I'll just.
I will let you know. Perfect. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So first of all, I wanted to start by thanking Scott for the opportunity of being here. I'm very happy that I'll get the chance to share my story with you. My name is Noreena Daly, and I'm a second-year MBA candidate at Yale School of Management. And before going over my goals and kind of why I decided to go back to school and get an MBA, I thought it would be helpful to share with you my profile. So as you can see, I'm a CPA with 9 years of experience in the financial services. So think of asset management, private equity, real estate. Right before Yale, I was an audit manager at PwC. I was promoted 3 times throughout my careers. I was a top performer 3 out of 3 years when I had manager responsibility. My GMAT was 660. I graduated from University of Maryland at College Park. I was an accounting major. My GPA was 4.0. I was on the dean's list 8 out of 8 semesters while in undergrad. While in undergrad, I was the finance director of Accounting and Business Association. My job was to connect CPA firm with the students on campus. I had 10 plus scholarships that cover 100% of my undergrad tuition. I am Romanian by nationality, born and raised there. I'm fluent in 3 languages, Spanish, Romanian, and English. And as extracurricular activity that I had, I was a VP of Public Relations for Toastmasters. Next slide. Okay. So in my last year at PwC, I had the opportunity to coordinate and promote the implementation of robotic process automation and artificial intelligence on several engagements. And that's how I became passionate about this idea of strategizing the use of cutting-edge technologies to make business processes more effective and efficient. And this prompted me to pursue an MBA with the intention to further explore this intersection between business and technology and build on that strategic mindset that I developed at PwC, basically take the problem solving from accounting and finance to operations in all areas of a business. Next slide. My end goal was to become a chief business officer, eventually a CEO. My vision was to find ways of integrating the cutting edge technologies to improve business processes and ultimately the lives of people and communities in which they live. Next slide. So my MBA journey started in May 2018 when I met Scott. And after a very long decision-making process that took me months, I landed on the 8 MBA programs. I applied in round 2. I got into 5 MBA programs. I got a full scholarship and a 20K stipend from one of the MBA programs, a full scholarship from another one, and then an 80% tuition coverage from another MBA program. Next slide. And here is where my MBA journey ended, or better said, begin. This is Evans Hall, which is the building where Yale School of Management is located. As I said, I'm currently a second year, and I can say that I enjoyed every single moment of my MBA experience, and I couldn't have hoped for a better outcome. And needless to say that I'm grateful to Scott for all the help and support through this process. Thank you. And then the next slide is just another image with the school.
Very, very cool design. You're already marketing for Yale.
Yeah, and then the next one, if you go to the next one, that's another one, and that's the.
Oh, I think I removed the last.
Oh, you did. It's that.
But yes, very cool. We'll have to add it in later. Awesome. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, about Yale School of Management, or any questions for Noreena, please feel free to ask, and we'll actually we see. We'll go through the last part of the presentation, then we'll go to some Q&A, and then I might just give some other sort of general advice for those of you still listening and watching. So our clients get into all the top schools, right? We had room for some of the logos here, but any school that you're applying to, we have people that we're sending to, and we do have really high success rates. And so what else about what we do? We start, for those of you that weren't here at the beginning of the presentation. We start with early planning. If you're not applying yet, like one of our client examples, and you want to figure out how to perfect your profile between now and when you do apply, we can help you to do that. What things should you do? What things should you not do? Are you in the right job? Do you need to get another job? You can work directly with myself, and we have our former Wharton admissions director who does a lot of early planning work. Just say, look, if I'm looking at you and thousands of others, here's what I want to see. Wharton and UCLA. Then we have tutoring, so GMAT, GRE tutoring. We talked a little bit about that earlier with in-house software we use to guide through the process of modules and thousands of questions, and our folks do extremely well. So we're often the second, third, fourth, even fifth tutoring company that people come to, and pretty much always the last. We have brainstorming sessions where we'll help you to, and this is just a very high-level overview. If you want to learn more, drop me an email, or better yet, visit the website and submit your information. Check out our packages, and you can go into much more details about how we work. But brainstorming session where we're learning about you and talking about your goals and your passions. We figure out what your story is, select the right schools based on personality, fit, career, chances of getting in. We'll do deep editing of the resume and the essays, and that's as much as you need. And we go through a whole project management tool, again, high-level overview. And we have recommendation assistants, so help you to select the recommenders and decide who you want to ask to write them, but also what they should be writing about, and then interviews. So we have a lot of former interviewers on our team, folks who used to interview at many top schools. And so you always have a couple people that you're working with, your main consultant, and then another main editor. So we have folks top MBA students, graduate professor of English, sort of like Princeton kind of masters in English and folks like that. And so that's the model that gets you the best results at the end. And so if you want to know anything more, this is a cool downloadable. I feel like we have a few of these on our website, personalmbacoach.com/start sign up, and that can give you some information. So I'm going to go back to this slide as we go to some Q&A, just to leave something on. Great. Well, thanks everyone for all the questions here. So we'll start answering. We have one question. When should you start preparing for the application process? When do you recommend to apply, and in which round? So it's actually not too early to start preparing. We're working with clients already. For round one. I'm kicking off another client this evening, had a bunch that we've started so far. So it's definitely not too early to get started. Often we recommend the earlier the better. if you do rush near the deadlines, it tends to impact the quality to some extent. So I think if you're here and you're thinking about applying and you want to apply in the fall, reach out. Let's chat. Definitely, we're doing a lot of tutoring now, and it's nice to start writing ahead of time so that you're not rushing and not editing in the last couple months. As far as the rounds, I know admissions directors will often say, apply when the time is right. I'll try to give a little bit more of a specific answer here. If you can get in round one, and for most schools that's in September, although for Columbia Business School, they'll start reviewing applications likely in May of this year, I recommend that. It's going to be better than round two. Now, how much better depends on the school. So it gets a little bit nuanced, and for some schools, rounds 1 and 2 come early. Round 3 is January. For other schools, round 2 is January. The big buckets of time are September and January, and I recommend the sooner the better. So next question is about strategies for international students, in my opinion. So we have a lot of international applicants. More than half of our clients are international, and we'll probably see those numbers jumping a little bit this year with some administration changes in the U.S. anyway. So what's the strategy? The strategy is to think about what you want out of your career and your life. Do you want to, for instance, let's say if you are, in India right now and you want to study at an M7 or a top 10 school in the US, do you want to go back home? Do you want to go to Bombay or stay here in Boston or Washington, D.C. or wherever it might be? And then just think about how that all makes sense for your story and your structures. As you're doing the essays, honestly, there's not a huge difference. We often get questions about cultural familiarity and knowledge. Look, we're not physically located in any one particular city. I mean, this is a virtual business, and we know the decision makers and the admissions directors from all the top schools, and that's really what you want. But there's not really a Indian strategy or a Chinese strategy. We have strategies for everybody. And everyone has their own cultural nuances, has their own personal unique situations, whether it's California, New York, London, or Delhi. So that's a bit of a tricky question to answer, to be honest, because our strategy would be, for you and not just based on your country. Then next question from Kinshuk: how are career prospects in M7 schools different from those in the top 20? In the long run, does it really matter? Great question. So really smart to ask that, right? Because it depends. We have a lot of situations where applicants don't go to a top school, but guess what? They do better than their friends that are going to a top school. So it's not necessarily that the higher the rank of the school, the more money you make or the better job you'll get. Now, there are correlations. So if you did a scatter plot, I'm getting too technical, but let's say if you did a scatter plot, you would certainly see some correlations there, but it's not a direct 100% correlation. And for some people, let's say if you're not the strongest in the class in M7 school, you can go to Columbia. Maybe you're better at NYU, where you can rise to the top. And if you want to go to a good consulting firm or an investment bank, guess what? You can do that from both of those schools. So it's something that's really worth looking at in a lot of detail, and often as we work with applicants, we take time to get to know them and to recommend the right strategy. But then, of course, there are people that would say, look, I want the best school possible. I don't care. Just get me into the highest ranked school that you can, and that's what we'll do. All right. So Shreyan's question from you: understand that the essay and story is an important part of the application. Along the way, I think in my story currently, seems very average and not unique. How should I think about my chances? So it's hard to be average, right? And not to make a joke, but there's nobody that's really average. I mean, you're either above average or below average. So you're probably not average. Hopefully you're a lot better than average or more interesting. So what can you do? The first thing that we do, and I know you reached out as well. So thanks. We'll be chatting shortly. It sounds like first thing you should do is start to think about, what are some things that might make you. Now, it might not be you saved 3 presidents and 4 countries necessarily, but what's interesting? I mean, people write about ping pong. Actually, I went to school. This is my undergraduate story. I don't know why I'm thinking about this now, but someone I went to school with for MIT, his biggest thing was ping pong, and he just really loved ping pong. Was great at ping pong, and you wouldn't think that, okay, playing ping pong is what makes you interesting, but maybe it does. So it's hard to say that without getting to know you, but we'll certainly chat about that shortly. And then you have one more question as well, Shreyan's, that so you plan to apply for an MBA a year from now, and currently have 2 years of work experience in a boutique bank and 3 years articleship and internship? At what point should you reach out? Yeah, so we have these early MBA planning packages. Basically, it's a couple $1,000s and it's strategic guidance and advice, from either myself or we'll have our former Wharton admission instructor do a lot of these for how to improve yourself. So if you have the budget, if you have the time, definitely good to reach out now. The articleship doesn't count as experience. So for those of you who aren't familiar, articleship is, it happens with the chartered accountant in India. You do 3 years of work there, but it doesn't really count. So it's really the 2 years of work experience now in an IB. You could apply now and start with 3 years, or you could wait a year and start with 4 years. It sounds like you're waiting a year, and that's a great time. So reach out now for early planning for sure. So here's another question, and yeah, we could just go in order and show I'm happy to answer all the questions. So a live question: what is the best strategy for an international student? Okay, so I think we answered that one already, actually. Let's see. So have we helped anyone with product management background or an aspiring product manager? Yes, definitely. We have. There's no one that we haven't helped. We've kind of been around for a while, many hundreds of folks. But yeah, have actually a good number of product managers, and had one in India that we were just talking with earlier today. How should one build an impressive profile based on product management, short-term post-MBA goal? Well, if you're thinking about your goals and your story, right, there are two parts to the story. There's the what you've done and the what you want to do. There's a little bit of a misunderstanding when some people think that I have to differentiate myself based on my goals and really what I want to do post-MBA. That's hard to do. And it's not something that I recommend trying to do. You just want to be really specific. So you want the goals to be detailed. You want them to be specific, realistic, aggressive. Putting together the story is just a matter of having this 30 or 60-second soundbite where we start with, here's what I've done. The camera's backwards. I'm on StreamYard. Here's what I've done. Here's what I want to do. And here's how the school is going to help me. And it's actually, here's how the school will help me. Then here's what I want to do. Having that clear picture is what makes sense. I would just talk about some skill sets that you have that would make you a good product manager. If you haven't done product management, are you working with technical folks? Are you working with finance? Do you understand products? What is it about that makes it for a good goal for you? And then XF asks about age. So is it too old? Or are you too old? Is it too late for a 32-year-old to apply for an MBA? No, definitely not. Is it harder to get in with more experience? Yes. And I'm not going to give you the standard answer of it doesn't matter in any age and blah, 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 everything is fine. It's not. It is harder to get in as you get older. However, we certainly send folks in their young 30s to M7 schools every year. So I would recommend reaching out, and we'd be happy to evaluate you further and talk about what we could do together. But no, 30s here is certainly not too old. Next from Hardik, how should we choose whether we have to pursue an MBA or a Master's of Finance? Yeah, that's a great question. So first, the age might have something to do with it. If you're young and you don't have a lot of experience, the specialized master's programs tend to take folks that are a little bit younger, actually quite a bit younger, often 1 year of experience, no experience, maybe 2 years. I wouldn't see the 32-year-old applying to a Master's of Finance. So first of all, it's just how much experience do you have? Then it's also, what do you want to get out of this whole experience, right? So the business school experience, are you looking to really, really specialize and be a finance leader and develop a lot of specific technical skills? In that case, the Master of Finance is going to do that for you. But if you want to get more executive skills, more management, rise up and be a bit of a mover and shaker in the industry that you might go into, then the MBA is going to give you that. So the network will be a little bit stronger. The broader sort of reach of the class is stronger, but you might not develop as many finance skills. So then from RS, we have a question: 9 years of entrepreneurship experience, with some special entrepreneurship, but low GPA, 65% in undergrad. GMAT score 760. Worry about GPA and over the work experience. So that's true. I mean, those are two things that I would say give me a little bit of pause. I like that you have the 760. I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about the entrepreneurship experience. We've had folks, had a guy from India with 8.5 years of experience, might have even been 9, from a not, super amazing company, get into Wharton and did, quite well. I do think the GPA was higher, but that said, depending on the quant score and everything else, it's certainly something that we can, look into. So I wouldn't be scared away just based on the 9 years, but it is something that I want to dive into in a little bit more depth. So then from Hardik again, thanks Hardik, how much time, or I'll rephrase, how much work experience, should you have when you apply to business school? Well, the average number of years for most schools is 5, and this varies, maybe 4.5, maybe 5.8 or 5.9, depending on the school. But roughly speaking, let's assume 5. And if you apply now, you'll start next year. So if you had 4 years of experience today, I guess it wouldn't be today, but maybe 3.5 today, would be 5 years upon matriculation by the time you start. So that's a great time. You can go a little bit earlier, or you can go a little bit later. We send people with, as little as 1 or 2 years of experience. We've had a few folks this year with 2 years of work experience that will be going to M7, and that's 2 years upon matriculation. And so that's definitely possible, but those cases are a lot harder, and we would want to evaluate them further. Then have a question from Abby. So what's the strategy for those applying for deferred enrollment? Yes, so we're doing a ton of deferred applications this year. I don't know if it's just that we're growing more in the deferred field. I mean, we've always done a lot, or if more deferred folks are applying, but we are doing a lot, and it's a great time to reach out. So, feel free to reach out if we haven't, connected. Although I feel like we might have. But in any case, strategies, right? You have a multi-part strategy for deferred applications, and deferred applications are those for folks that are still in school, and really haven't left school yet, right? So, and you get in now, and then you defer, and you start in 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. Really think about why you need that MBA, but why you don't know that you will definitely be applying later on. It's a bit of a sort of tricky situation. If you prove to them that this is the absolute path for you, and there's nothing that you will do but an MBA, et cetera, they might say, okay, well then come back in a few years and apply then. So it gets a little bit nuanced, where you have to show that this is the path for you, but that you also want to do other things that might not lead you to apply to an MBA in the future. Therefore, let's rope me in now and make sure that I enroll. So Rajat, should we disclose if you already have an MBA, and how does it impact the application? So you have to disclose everything in the application process. There's not an option to leave anything out. They need to know everything that you've done since college, basically. So you do have to disclose. It does impact the success rates. Now, we do have people that do second MBAs. There are a list of schools that will accept a second MBA, and some schools that are not super excited about accepting a second MBA. It does make it harder, but I would need to evaluate your profile in a little bit more detail. Okay, so how to overcome the low GPA? Well, how to overcome low GPA? There are a few things that you can do, right? One is you can get a high test score. That's probably the most obvious, right? The higher the test score, the more likely you are to overcome the low GPA. 2 is you can take some graduate level courses on the side. I like Berkeley and UCLA just because they're online, they're easy to register for, they have flexible, sort of schedules in terms of timing and everything, and they're not super expensive. So that, and then the last is just to have a recommender write about your analytical skills, and for you to write about your analytical and sort of quant skills in the application. So those are a few things to sort of think about. If you want to reach out and chat with us, I know Abhijit posted some notes as well on Facebook and GMAT. So just personalmbacoach.com. Feel free to reach out. Jump on the website. We're actually launching a new website soon. So apologies, you have the old one right now. But jump on. Take a look at the packages, see what we have to offer, and if that interests you, then feel free to reach back out. So we have a few other questions here. Hold on, I scrolled down too far. Okay, so how long do folks study for the GMAT? Yes, so that's a great question. I mean, anywhere from 2 days to 2 years is the wide range, but usually we see like 2 to 3 months is the most common time period that we hear from applicants. And then it depends if you're doing self-study or if you're doing tutoring. If you do tutor with us, we'll make it a lot faster and less painful, and we'll raise your score. But on your own, it might take a little bit longer. I won't answer minimum score of GMAT because honestly, there is no minimum. It just depends. And I don't want to say it depends, but it really does depend. Everyone's different. Some people are going to M7 schools with scores in the high 600s, and others will get rejected with a 740. So it really does depend on everything else. And we've had folks, we had someone recently, get accepted to an M7 school really essentially without a score at all. And they didn't waive the exam, so that was a separate situation. But in any case, it really does depend. Now they'll have to take another test later on. So Vipin, what would be the chances of Harvard, Stanford, Wharton for a non-MBB, non-IB background applicant? Again, I really, would be hard pressed to answer that question live. But reach out and send me your profile. You don't need to work at McKinsey to get into business school for sure. How important are extracurricular activities? Yeah, I would say they're pretty important. Schools want you to be well-rounded. They want you to do things on campus and not just, party and have fun and go to class and go home. So they want to see what kind of a community citizen you are. It's not a total game changer if you don't have strong extracurricular activities, but I would say that they are important. Okay, so here's what I graduated in 2019, intern 8 months at Zurich. Based corporate finance boutique instead of a full-time role. Currently pursuing a 1-year reputed fellowship from India. Should you target Harvard, Stanford, Wharton in 2023 or 2024? Seems like I would wait a little bit. You want to have good 2 to 3 years of sort of solid, regular, full-time experience. Nothing that's confusing. Nothing that's hard for an admissions director to see. Intern and then 1-year fellowship. I think you want to have a couple or a few years. So it looks like I'd wait a couple of years before applying. So here's a question from pro students. I have 3 years of experience in tech consulting from a Big Four. I've done work in some cutting edge work with international clients. So I wonder what it means to have a great work experience. Well, it sounds like you're definitely in range. You're working for a consulting firm. You've done some cutting edge work. You have 3 years. So I would certainly be interested in learning more about you. Yeah. So that sounds like that would be strong experience so far. Tech consulting from a Big Four. I think that's great. You have some of the initial things that we'd be looking for. So do M7 schools like to boost their countries represented statistics? Are conditions more favorable for international students from countries where folks apply rarely? Yes. Yeah, just to be direct, yes. We had a guy, Niso, who's done other videos from us. So he was from Zimbabwe and was living in Bermuda when he applied. And he did really well, with us, and also got some scholarships. We actually got him an additional $50,000 more than he got in the year before hiring us. So that's the ROI. I think that, he's a fantastic applicant. Niso, if you watch this, nothing against you as an applicant, buddy. I think the country's helped. I think being from Bermuda was great. They didn't have a lot of other people, that were applying from Bermuda. So I think that the country is part of it. As you said, they want a well-rounded class. That said, if you're from an overrepresented country, don't worry. They still take people from all over. GRE versus GMAT. So the GRE is going to be easier on the analytical side and harder on the verbal side. So you'll need to have like vocab words and things like that. So if English is not your first language, maybe the GMAT's better if you're very good at quant. That said, if you don't want to pick up a calculator and that's stressful for you, then the GRE might be better. So yeah, don't forget to click to like the session if you did like it, and if you have other questions or thoughts, reach out. I think we have 2 more questions that we'll answer today. Low chances for entrepreneur experience profile. What would they be seeking in an entrepreneurial profile apart from GMAT? Any other factors for M7 admissions? So no, we have a lot of entrepreneurs. We have folks from family businesses, especially abroad. A lot of folks from family businesses. Entrepreneurs, you can definitely get in. I think the non-traditional profiles in some ways are actually better than the traditional ones because they don't get them as often. Yeah, so really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you so much for your help here. Here's a question: does taking HBS core impact when applying to Harvard? No, it doesn't at all. If you want to take the core, you can take it. Harvard does not look at people that register for the core and decide that they're more likely to get in by any means. So yeah, again, reach out with any questions or thoughts. Personal MBA Coach, .com. Subscribe to the GMAT Club YouTube channel, and we have our own YouTube channel at Personal MBA Coach. Thank you so much for the time, for the great questions. Best of luck, everyone. Stay safe. Try to find a vaccine, and let's all get through this.